Racist billionaire marries an obese older woman as a dare, and is stunned when this happened. Before diving into the story, write in the comments where you're watching from. Let's enjoy the story. Alexander Pierce stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, swirling aged whiskey in a crystal glass while his fellow board members laughed behind him. At 35, he'd built Pierce Technologies into a $100 billion empire, yet these monthly board meetings had become mere formalities, opportunities for the old guard to reminisce about their glory days while he planned his next acquisition. Speaking of acquisitions, Charles Wellington's gravelly voice cut through Alex's thoughts. When are you going to settle down, my boy? Can't build a proper dynasty without an heir. The other board members chuckled, a sound that grated on Alex's nerves like sandpaper. When I find someone worth my time, Charles, Alex replied without turning, his reflection in the window revealing his signature smirk. Though that's becoming increasingly unlikely in today's dating pool. These young socialites are all the same, shallow, predictable, boring. Perhaps, drawled Richard Montgomery, the oldest board member at 72, you're looking in the wrong age bracket entirely. This earned more laughter. But Richard continued, my colleague Dr. Catherine Chun is giving a lecture at the university next week. Brilliant woman, pioneering researcher in quantum computing. She's closer to my age than yours, but I dare say she'd be anything but boring. Alex finally turned, arching an eyebrow. Are you suggesting I date someone old enough to be my mother? Please, Richard. I have standards. Standards? Or prejudices? Richard's eyes held a challenging glint. You know, Alex, for someone who prides himself on being a visionary, your views on relationships are remarkably antiquated. The room grew quiet, the tension palpable. Alex's jaw tightened. He'd never taken well to criticism, especially not in front of the board. And you think your Dr. Chin would be interested in someone my age? Sounds desperate if you ask me. Care to put your money where your mouth is? Richard leaned forward, his expression shrewd. I'll bet you can't convince Catherine to marry you within 6 months. Say, a controlling interest in Montgomery Industries. Alex's pulse quickened. Montgomery Industries' quantum computing division would be the perfect addition to Pierce Technologies' portfolio. And when I prove this ridiculous idea impossible, then I'll sign over my shares in the Singapore expansion. Richard extended his hand. Though, I suspect you'll find this challenge more illuminating than you expect. Alex strode across the room and grasped Richard's hand firmly. Deal. Though I hope you're prepared to lose, old friend. The other board members exchanged worried glances, but Alex was already pulling out his phone. Have your assistant send me the details of that lecture. Time to prove just how persuasive I can be. What Alex couldn't know as he stood there, cocky smile firmly in place, was that this dare would unravel everything he thought he knew about love, age, and his own carefully constructed worldview. The game he was about to play would change far more than just stock portfolios. It would change his very soul. If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way, you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories we have coming up. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more of what you love. Thank you. The lecture hall buzzed with anticipation as Dr. Catherine Chun organized her notes at the podium. At 58, she commanded the room with an effortless grace that came from decades of breaking barriers in a male-dominated field. Her silver-streaked black hair was swept into an elegant chignon, her charcoal suit crisp and professional. She glanced up at the packed audience, noting with satisfaction the diverse mix of students, faculty, and industry professionals. They're saying this could be one of the biggest breakthroughs in quantum computing this decade, a young graduate student whispered too loudly to his friend. Catherine smiled to herself, remembering her own excitement at that age. She'd spent 30 years fighting to be taken seriously, starting as the only woman in her doctoral program at MIT, through countless rejected grant applications and dismissive colleagues, to finally leading her own research team at the forefront of quantum technology. As she began her presentation on quantum error correction, Catherine noticed a latecomer slipping into the back row. Even from a distance, she recognized Alexander Pierce. His face was splashed across enough tech magazines. She'd read about his aggressive business tactics and playboy lifestyle, certainly never expecting him at an academic lecture. Catherine continued without missing a beat, though she noticed his expression shift from boredom to grudging interest as she explained how her team's breakthrough could revolutionize data encryption. During the Q&A session, Pierce's hand shot up. Dr. Chen, your work on quantum decoherence is impressive, but surely you'd agree that the practical applications are decades away. His tone carried that familiar hint of condescension she'd dealt with her entire career. Catherine's eyes sparkled with amusement. Actually, Mr. Pierce, we've already achieved coherence times of over an hour in our latest trials. The results are pending peer review, but I'd be happy to share our methodology, assuming you can keep up with the mathematics. Scattered laughter rippled through the audience as Pierce's smirk faltered slightly. After the lecture, Catherine gathered her materials, declining several eager students' requests for coffee meetings. She had a crucial experiment running that afternoon and couldn't afford any delays. As she headed for the exit, Pierce materialized beside her. Dr. Chen, I apologize if my question earlier seemed skeptical. I'd love to discuss your work further over dinner. His smile was practiced, calculated to charm. Catherine paused, studying him with the same analytical precision she applied to quantum states. Mr. Pierce, I've read enough about you to know that quantum computing isn't your usual dinner topic. What's your real interest here? Can a man be intrigued by brilliant research? And please call me Alex. He stepped closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially. Besides, I have a feeling you and I could have some fascinating conversations about more than just quantum mechanics. Catherine almost laughed at his transparent attempt at flirtation. I'm sure we could, but I make it a policy not to mix business with pleasure. If you're genuinely interested in my research, have your team contact my laboratory for a proper meeting. She turned to leave, then added over her shoulder, and Mr. Pierce? That charm might work better on someone who hasn't spent their entire career dealing with overconfident young men. As she walked away, Catherine found herself both amused and slightly intrigued by the encounter. She'd meant what she said about not mixing business and pleasure, but there was something almost endearing about his clumsy attempt to impress her. Still, she had more important things to focus on than whatever game Alexander Pierce was playing. Her quantum processor was waiting, and unlike men with hidden agendas, quantum particles never pretended to be something they weren't. Alex paced his office, Catherine's dismissal from the lecture hall still rankling him 3 days later. No one had ever brushed him off so easily, so competently. His assistant Sophie watched him with barely concealed amusement as he checked his phone for the 15th time that hour. Still no response from Dr. Chen's labs? Sophie asked, knowing full well the answer. She'd been with Alex long enough to recognize when his ego was bruised. I've donated $1 million to their research department. They should be begging for a meeting. Alex ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up for the first time Sophie could remember. Maybe that's the problem, Sophie mused, arranging files on his desk. You're used to people begging. Dr. Chen doesn't seem the begging type. Alex stopped pacing. What do you mean? I did some research. Did you know she turned down a CEO position at Quantum Dynamics last year? Said she preferred doing the actual work to managing other people's egos. She also donates most of her patent royalties to STEM scholarships for underprivileged girls. Why would she do that? Those patents must be worth millions, because not everyone measures success in dollars, Alex. Sophie's voice carried an unexpected weight. Some people measure it in lives changed. The words hit Alex harder than he expected, stirring a memory he'd long suppressed. His mother, before she died, saying almost the same thing. He'd been 17, bragging about his first successful investment, when she'd taken his hand and whispered, "Remember, Alex, true wealth isn't in your bank account. It's in the lives you touch." He shook off the memory and grabbed his jacket. "Cancel my afternoon meetings. I need to make a stop." An hour later, Alex walked into Catherine's lab unannounced, carrying a stack of scientific journals. He found her bent over complex equipment, safety goggles pushed up into her hair, completely absorbed in her work. "Your paper on quantum entanglement from 2019, he said without preamble. "The methodology section had a fatal flaw that should have invalidated your results." Catherine didn't even look up. Page 47. Footnote 3 addresses that apparent flaw. Most people don't read the footnotes. I did. Your solution was brilliant. Completely changed my understanding of the underlying principle. Now she did look up, surprise flickering across her face. I've spent the last 3 days reading everything you've published. I have questions. Catherine studied him for a long moment, then gestured to a nearby stool. Ask them. What followed was 2 hours of intense scientific discussion that left Alex's head spinning. Catherine's passion for her work was infectious, her explanations clear yet challenging. She never once dumbed things down for him, instead pushing him to keep up, to think deeper. "You're not what I expected," she said finally, as lab lights automatically dimmed for evening. "Because I can understand quantum mechanics?" "Because you actually tried to understand. Most people who come here want to buy knowledge, package it, sell it. They don't want to do the work of learning." Alex felt a strange flush of pride at her words, followed immediately by shame as he remembered the dare. He opened his mouth to what? Confess? Make an excuse? But Catherine was already turning back to her equipment. "Same time tomorrow," she asked casually. "If you've done the reading on quantum error correction, I could use a fresh perspective on our current problem." "I'll be here," Alex promised, suddenly realizing he'd completely forgotten about the 3 multinational deals he was supposed to review tomorrow. Somehow, they didn't seem as important anymore. As he headed for the door, Catherine called out, "Oh, and Alex? Next time use the front entrance. I know you paid security to let you in through the lab access door. I appreciate dedication, but not manipulation." Alex felt his face grow hot as he left, both embarrassed at being caught and strangely pleased she'd called him Alex instead of Mr. Pierce. If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way, you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories we have coming up. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more of what you love. Thank you. 2 weeks of daily lab visits had created a routine Alex never expected to enjoy. He found himself looking forward to the intellectual sparring, the way Catherine challenged his assumptions, her dry humor that caught him off guard. Today, they'd moved their discussion to her office after a breakthrough in the lab had left them both energized and talking rapidly over cups of cooling tea. The application possibilities are endless. Alex gestured enthusiastically, tie loosened and sleeves rolled up. "If we combine your error correction method with Pierce Technologies' neural network." "Since when did this become a business proposition?" Catherine interrupted, her tone cooling slightly. "That's not what Alex backtracked, realizing his mistake. "I'm just excited about the potential. Your work is revolutionary, Catherine."
She softened.
"And that excitement has nothing to do with your company's struggling quantum division? You know about that? I make it my business to know about potential collaborators or competitors." She gave him an appraising look. "Though I'm still trying to figure out which one you are." Before Alex could respond, his phone buzzed. A text from Charles Wellington, emergency board meeting. 30 minutes. "Concerning your recent distractions, I have to go." Alex stood abruptly, gathering his jacket. He hesitated at the door. Would you like to have dinner with me?" "Not to discuss business. Just dinner." Catherine's expression was unreadable. "Alex, I'm old enough to be brilliant enough to keep me fascinated for hours," he interrupted. "Accomplished enough to make most people I know look lazy in comparison?" "Yes to both." A small smile played at her lips. "I was going to say old enough to know better, but yes.
Dinner would be nice."
Alex arrived at the board meeting still smiling until he saw the faces around the table. Charles Wellington stood at the head, projecting photos onto the screen. Pictures of Alex entering Catherine's lab, them talking over coffee in the university courtyard. "This infatuation has gone far enough," Charles declared. "Your shareholders are nervous, Alex. Dating a woman her age, it looks unstable, desperate. Think of the company's image." "My personal life is none of their business," Alex snapped, but Charles continued. "We've already lost the Jensen contract. They said they're not confident in your judgment right now. The board is considering a temporary step-back period. You want to force me out?" Alex's voice was dangerously quiet. "We want you to remember who you are," Charles replied. Pierce Technologies needs a strong, focused leader. Not whatever this midlife crisis is. Catherine Chun is one of the most brilliant minds in quantum computing. The fact that you can't see past her age. Alex stopped, suddenly hearing his own words. How different they sounded from his attitude just weeks ago. The fact that you can't see what this is doing to everything you've built. Charles shook his head. End it, Alex. Before you lose more than just a few contracts. Alex left the meeting in a daze, his dinner plans with Catherine now carrying far more weight than a simple date. His phone buzzed again. Richard Montgomery requesting a meeting.
The dare.
He'd almost forgotten about the dare. The sick feeling in his stomach told him that wasn't true. He hadn't forgotten. He'd just started wishing he had never made it in the first place. Alex chose a small French bistro for their dinner, deliberately avoiding the upscale restaurants where he usually dined. Catherine arrived wearing a simple black dress, her hair down for the first time since he'd met her. The sight made his rehearsed greeting catch in his throat. "No lab coat," he managed finally. "I almost didn't recognize you." Disappointed? Catherine's eyes sparkled with amusement. "I do occasionally leave the lab, you know." They settled into a corner table, and Alex found himself sharing stories he hadn't thought about in years. About his mother teaching him to code on an ancient computer when he was 7. About starting his first company in his garage at 19, just months after her death. "She would have loved your scholarship program," he admitted. "She was always trying to get me to think beyond profit margins." "Tell me about her," Catherine said softly, and Alex found himself describing the woman who had raised him alone, working 3 jobs to keep him in good schools, never letting him see how hard it was until he was old enough to understand. "She died before Pierce Technologies took off," Alex said, staring into his wine glass. "Sometimes I wonder what she'd think of who I've become. I think," Catherine reached across the table and touched his hand, "she'd be proud of who you're becoming." The warmth of her touch sent an unexpected jolt through him. Alex looked up, meeting her eyes, and for a moment, all the barriers he'd built, age, status, the dare, seemed to crumble. "What about you?" he asked quickly, trying to regain his composure. "You've never mentioned family." Catherine withdrew her hand, something flickering behind her eyes. "My husband died 12 years ago. Cancer. We never had children. Too focused on our careers, always thinking there would be time later." She smiled sadly. "David was brilliant, stubborn, absolutely convinced he could solve any problem with enough research. Even at the end, he was more worried about his unfinished work than himself." "I'm sorry," Alex said, meaning it. "Were you together long?" 25 years. We met in grad school. He was my professor, actually." She laughed at Alex's surprised expression. "Yes, I know the irony. The age difference caused quite the scandal. His colleagues said he was having a midlife crisis. My friend said I was selling out to the patriarchy. We ended up eloping to Vegas just to avoid everyone's opinions. Did you ever regret it? Going against everyone's expectations. The only thing I regret is caring so much about what other people thought. We wasted too much time trying to prove our relationship was appropriate instead of just living it." Catherine's gaze turned piercing. "What about you, Alex? What expectations are you trying to live up to?" The question hit too close to home. Alex signaled for the check, suddenly needing air. Outside the restaurant, they walked in comfortable silence until reaching Catherine's car.
"Thank you for dinner," she said.
"It was surprisingly nice." "Surprisingly?" Alex raised an eyebrow, trying to mask how much her approval meant to him.
"Yes."
"I expected you to spend the evening either trying to impress me or trying to acquire my research. Instead, you were just you." She studied his face in the streetlight. "I like that version of Alex much better than the one who swaggered into my lecture hall." Before he could respond, she stretched up and kissed his cheek, then slipped into her car. Alex stood there long after her taillights had disappeared, touching the spot where her lips had met his skin, feeling like a teenager again. His phone buzzed, another message from Richard Montgomery about their bet. Alex deleted it without reading it, but the guilt remained, heavy in his stomach. The real Alex, the one Catherine liked, wouldn't be playing games with someone's heart for a business deal. But then again, The real Alex wouldn't have fallen for someone like Catherine in the first place. And there was no denying it anymore. He was falling, hard and fast, into territory he never expected to explore. The next week brought a storm of complications. Alex arrived at his office to find Vanessa Sinclair, his largest investor's daughter and his ex-girlfriend, perched on his desk. Behind her stood her father, James Sinclair, looking grave. "Darling," Vanessa purred, "Daddy and I are worried about you. This little experiment with your mature friend has gone on long enough. Get out," Alex said quietly, but James stepped forward. "The board called me, Alex. Your stock is down 12%. My stockholders are nervous. But I have a solution." James smiled thinly. "Merge Pierce Technologies with Sinclair Industries. You and Vanessa announce your engagement at the same time. The perfect power couple, steadying the ship. That's your solution? An arranged marriage?" Alex laughed incredulously. "Better than what you're doing now," Vanessa snapped. "Do you have any idea what people are saying? That you're having some sort of breakdown. That you're being manipulated by that woman. Her name is Catherine," Alex cut in, "and she has more integrity in her little finger than what?" Vanessa stepped closer. "Then the woman you told just 3 months ago was perfect for you? Before you suddenly started slumming it at university lectures?" A knock interrupted them. Sophie stood in the doorway with Richard Montgomery. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, not looking sorry at all, "but Dr. Chin is here for your quantum computing division review." Alex's heart stopped. Catherine stood behind them, clearly having heard everything. Her face was composed, but her eyes...
God, her eyes.
"I can come back," she said professionally. "No," Alex stepped toward her, but she was already turning away. He caught her arm. "Catherine, please." "Mr. Pierce," she said formally, "I suggest you focus on your company's stability. Clearly, you have more age-appropriate options to consider." She pulled free and walked away, her heels clicking on the marble floor like accusations. "Well, that was convenient," Vanessa smirked. "Now, about the merger."
"Get out."
Alex's voice was steel. "Both of you. Sophie, call security if they don't leave immediately." After they left, Richard stayed behind. "The 6-month deadline is approaching, Alex. Though I'm starting to think I've already won our little bet." "The bet's off," Alex said, staring out his window. "That's not how it works. You made a deal." "I don't care about the deal." Alex turned, his composure cracking. "I don't care about Montgomery Industries or the Singapore expansion, or any of it. What I care about just walked out that door thinking I'm exactly the shallow bastard she first assumed I was." Richard's expression softened unexpectedly. "Then why are you still in this office?" The words hit Alex like a physical blow. He grabbed his jacket and ran for the elevator, but Catherine's car was already pulling away. He jumped into his own car, breaking several traffic laws as he raced to her lab. He found Dr. Marcus Wong, Catherine's primary researcher, instead. "She's gone for the day," Marcus said coldly. "Though you might want to know your little game just cost us more than you can imagine." "What do you mean?" The university board called an emergency meeting. "They're concerned about inappropriate relationships affecting our funding. They're threatening to shut down our quantum research program entirely." Marcus's face was bitter. 20 years of work, hundreds of students' futures, all at risk because you decided to treat our department head like a conquest. "That's not, I never meant," Alex stopped. Excuses wouldn't help. "How do I fix this?" "You don't," said a new voice. Alex turned to find Sophie in the doorway. "But we might be able to." She held up her tablet, showing emails between Charles Wellington and James Sinclair, dating back months. They'd been planning the merger, orchestrating the whole crisis. There were even messages about paying photographers to document Alex's lab visits, making them look as scandalous as possible. "They've been manipulating you," Sophie said. "All of them. The board, the Sinclairs, even Richard. They wanted you distracted, off balance, ready to accept their demands. Why are you showing me this?" "Because in 3 years working for you, these past few weeks are the first time I've seen you truly happy," Sophie smiled. "And because Catherine's quantum computing breakthroughs could revolutionize data security." The kind of security that could prevent corporate espionage like this. Alex looked at Marcus. You said I can't fix this, but maybe Pierce Technologies can. Full funding for the quantum program, completely independent board. Catherine retains all intellectual property rights. He pulled out his phone. I'll have the contracts drawn up in an hour. She won't accept it, Marcus warned. Not from you? No, Alex agreed. But she might accept it from you, as department head, once she steps down to focus on research, which is all she ever wanted anyway, isn't it? Marcus studied him for a long moment. You really do care about her. More than I ever expected to. More than any business deal or social expectation or stupid bet. Alex ran his hands through his hair. But right now, saving her life's work is more important than saving my relationship with her. Good answer, said a quiet voice from the doorway. They all turned to find Catherine standing there, eyes bright with unshed tears. Though I expect a full explanation about this bet you mentioned. If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way, you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories we have coming up. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more of what you love. Thank you. The lab cleared quickly, leaving Alex and Catherine alone among the humming quantum processors. The silence stretched between them like an endless equation, too complex to solve. A bet, Catherine said finally, her voice carefully controlled. Tell me. Alex started to reach for her, then stopped himself. Richard Montgomery bet me I couldn't convince you to marry me within 6 months. His quantum computing division against my Singapore expansion. I see. Catherine's laugh was hollow. And here I thought I was too old to be this naive. Catherine, please. Do you know what the worst part is? She turned to face him, eyes blazing. I actually believed you'd changed. That all those hours in the lab, those conversations, that they meant something. They did. They do. Alex stepped forward. The bet might have brought me to your lecture, but everything since then has been real. Has it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been playing everyone masterfully. The board, the Sinclairs, me. She gestured to the documents Sophie had revealed. Even this corporate conspiracy you've uncovered. Rather convenient timing, isn't it? Before Alex could respond, the lab door burst open. Emma Chen, Catherine's younger sister, stormed in, her resident doctor's coat still on. I came as soon as I got Marcus's message. Are you okay? I'm fine, Emma. Catherine's professional mask slipped back into place. Like hell you are. Emma rounded on Alex. I warned her about you. Rich boy playing games, thinking he could.
Emma?
Catherine's sharp tone stopped her sister's tirade. I can handle this.
Can you?
Because this is exactly what happened with Michael. The name fell like a bombshell in the room. Catherine went pale. That's different. Is it? Emma's voice softened. Another powerful man claiming he could see past age differences, only interested in your brilliant mind. Right up until he stole your research and left you with nothing but a broken heart and a lawsuit. Alex felt like he'd been punched. There was someone else? 5 years ago, Emma explained bitterly. Michael Crawford, tech billionaire, 30 years younger than Catherine, pursued her relentlessly, convinced her to collaborate on a project, then patented her work behind her back and claimed she was just a lonely older woman imagining a relationship. I had no idea, Alex whispered. No, you wouldn't. Catherine's voice was tired. I made sure that story never made the papers. The university's reputation was at stake. So I settled quietly, signed an NDA, buried myself in new research, started building walls. Walls I crashed right through, Alex realized. With the same kind of manipulation. Mr. Pierce? A security guard appeared in the doorway. The board members are demanding your presence. They're threatening to call an emergency shareholder meeting. Tell them to go ahead. Alex pulled out his phone, dialing quickly. Sophie? Execute Protocol Phoenix. Catherine frowned. What's Protocol Phoenix? Something I set up after my mother died. A failsafe. Alex's expression was grimly satisfied. In about 10 minutes, Every board member's personal financial transactions for the past 5 years will be released to the SECs, including Charles Wellington's offshore accounts and the Sinclair's insider trading. You're bluffing, Emma said. Wanna bet? Alex's smile was sharp. I learned from my mother to always have leverage. I just never had a reason to use it before. Why now? Catherine asked quietly. Because they threaten something I care about. Alex stopped, running a hand through his hair. I know I have no right to ask you to trust me. Not after everything. But I swear, Catherine, somewhere between that first lecture and now, this stopped being a game. You stopped being a means to an end and became everything. Emma snorted. Oh, he's good. But Catherine was looking at her computer screen, where emails were flooding in. Board members resigning, share prices fluctuating, reporters calling. You're destroying your own company to protect my research program? No, Alex said simply. I'm finally becoming someone my mother would be proud of. Someone who might, eventually, be worthy of you. The lab phone rang. Marcus answered it, listened briefly, then turned to Catherine with wide eyes. Crawford Technologies just filed for bankruptcy. Something about years of stolen patents being exposed. Emma grabbed Catherine's arm. Did you? No. Catherine looked at Alex in astonishment. You didn't. Protocol Phoenix wasn't just about my board, Alex admitted. I had Sophie dig into everyone who might have hurt you. Michael Crawford's House of Cards was built on stolen research. Not just yours, dozens of scientists. It just needed a push. Why? Catherine's voice broke slightly. Because you deserve justice. Because Crawford hurt you. And I almost became him. Alex moved toward the door. I'll have the research funding transferred to a blind trust. You'll never have to see me again. Alex. Catherine's voice stopped him. That day in the lecture hall, you asked a question about quantum decoherence. About how long we could maintain a stable state. I remember. The answer is, it depends on the strength of the connection. She took a step toward him. And how much both particles are willing to fight against outside interference. Emma threw up her hands. Seriously? You're going to forgive him using quantum metaphors? No. Catherine smiled slightly. I'm going to give him a chance to earn forgiveness. Starting with dinner tonight, where he'll tell me exactly how he plans to fix everything he's broken, including my trust. I don't deserve a second chance, Alex said softly. Probably not, Catherine agreed. But I'm old enough to know that life rarely gives us what we deserve. It gives us what we're brave enough to fight for. The media storm hit like a Category 5 hurricane. Alex sat in Catherine's living room 3 days later, watching multiple news channels simultaneously on his tablet. The headlines scrolled relentlessly. Tech billionaires meltdown, Pierce Technologies in chaos, age gap romance rocks Silicon Valley. His favorite was Quantum of Solace. How love destroyed an empire. They're really enjoying themselves, aren't they? Catherine handed him a cup of coffee, settling beside him on the couch. Her house was exactly what he'd expected. Walls of books, comfortable furniture, a baby grand piano in the corner covered in research papers. The shareholders are calling for my head, Alex said, accepting the coffee gratefully. He hadn't slept much since Protocol Phoenix went into effect. We've lost 40% of our market value. Having second thoughts? About exposing the corruption?
No.
About dragging you into this media circus? Every minute. He gestured at a particularly unflattering article about their age difference. You don't deserve this scrutiny. I'm more concerned about your former board members' wives, Catherine mused. They keep calling me, you know. Apparently, their husbands' frozen assets have left them in quite the bind. Mrs. Wellington called you? Alex nearly choked on his coffee. Oh yes. First to threaten, then to cry, finally to ask for investment advice. Catherine's eyes twinkled. I suggested they all audit some university courses. It's never too late to become self-sufficient. Their laughter was interrupted by Emma bursting in, still in her hospital scrubs. Turn on Channel 7.
Now.
They switched screens to find Vanessa Sinclair being interviewed, tears streaming perfectly down her cheeks. Alex was like a different person after he met her, she sobbed. We were planning our future together, and then suddenly, I'm just worried about his mental state. The age difference, the impulsive business decisions, that manipulative little, Emma started, but Catherine held up a hand. Wait for it. On screen, the interviewer asked about the insider trading allegations. Vanessa's tears dried instantly. No comment on ongoing investigations, she snapped, walking off camera. You knew she'd slip up? Alex asked Catherine. Women my age know something about masks, Alex. We can spot them more easily on others. She touched his hand. Speaking of which, Richard Montgomery is holding a press conference in an hour. Alex tensed. Richard had been suspiciously quiet since Protocol Phoenix launched. Sophie's looking into his involvement with Crawford Technologies. Already found it, Emma held up her phone. Your assistant is scary efficient. Apparently, Montgomery was Crawford's silent partner in more than a few patent thefts, including Catherine's. That's why he pushed the bet, Alex realized. He wanted me distracted while they moved against Pierce Technologies. Catherine was just convenient bait. Convenient until you actually fell in love with her, Emma pointed out bluntly. The room went very still. They hadn't used that word yet, love. It hung in the air between them like one of Catherine's quantum particles, existing in multiple states simultaneously. The moment was shattered by Alex's phone ringing. Sophie's voice was urgent. Turn on the financial news.
Now.
They switched channels to find Richard Montgomery at a podium, looking grave. It saddens me to announce that due to recent events, Montgomery Industries is initiating a hostile takeover of Pierce Technologies. He can't, Alex protested. He doesn't have the capital. Due to our concerns about leadership stability, Richard continued, we've formed a coalition of investors, including Crawford Technologies' major shareholders and the Sinclair Group. They're working together. Catherine understood immediately. All of them, using the chaos you caused to seize control. With the current stock price so low, Alex calculated rapidly. They could actually do it. Everything my mother and I built. Unless, said a new voice, someone else bought a controlling interest first. They turned to find Marcus in the doorway, holding a stack of papers. The university board met this morning. They're impressed with the independent funding trust you set up, Alex. Very impressed. They'd like to discuss a partnership. A partnership? Catherine took the papers, scanning them quickly. Marcus, this is a merger, he confirmed, between the university's quantum computing program and Pierce Technologies. The board will back us with their full endowment fund. Can they do that? Emma asked. They can when 3 Nobel laureates threaten to resign if they don't. Marcus smiled. Turns out a lot of people in academia have scores to settle with Crawford and Montgomery. Patent theft doesn't make you many friends in research circles. Alex studied Catherine's face. It's your decision. I won't influence. Yes, you will, she interrupted. Because if we do this, we do it together. As equals. No more games, no more bets, no more hidden agendas. Just one problem, Emma pointed out. The media will say she's taking advantage of your vulnerable position, using the relationship to seize corporate control. Let them, Catherine said firmly. I'm done hiding from scandal. Michael Crawford took my research and my confidence. I won't let Richard Montgomery take anything else from anyone I love. There it was again. That word. This time, Alex didn't let the moment slip away. He pulled Catherine close, not caring that Emma and Marcus were watching, that the news was still blaring, that his business empire was hanging by a thread. I love you, he said simply. Everything else is just quantum noise. Catherine laughed against his chest. That's not how quantum mechanics works. Then teach me, he whispered. We have time. The next 2 weeks became a blur of boardrooms and media appearances. Alex and Catherine sat side by side at the merger announcement press conference, their clasped hands hidden under the table, but their united front clear to everyone. Dr. Chun, a reporter called out, how do you respond to accusations that this merger is a romantic rather than strategic decision? Catherine leaned into the microphone. I respond with data. Our combined quantum computing research has already produced 3 patent-pending breakthroughs. The university's endowment fund has increased by 12% since the announcement. And yes, she smiled slightly. I'm dating Alex Pierce. The two facts are not mutually exclusive, despite what some people seem to think. Mr. Pierce, another reporter jumped in. Your former board member Charles Wellington claims you're being manipulated by one of the most respected scientists in quantum computing. Alex interrupted. By a woman who's devoted her life to advancing human knowledge? I should be so lucky. He turned to Catherine with such genuine admiration that several reporters actually sighed. But behind the scenes, the battle was getting uglier. Richard Montgomery's coalition was fighting the merger with everything they had. Alex paced Catherine's office later that night, reviewing their options. They're threatening the university donors, he reported grimly, claiming the merger will taint the school's reputation. 3 major donors have already pulled out. Let them, said a new voice. Dr. Diana Chen, Catherine's mother and the university's former dean of physics, walked in unannounced. At 82, she still carried herself like the force of nature she'd always been. Mom? Catherine stood. What are you doing here? Cleaning up messes as usual. Diana set her bag down. Did you really think I'd stay in retirement while my daughter and her young man fight off corporate vultures? Dr. Chen, Alex started, but Diana waved him off. You're dating my daughter. Call me Diana. She pulled out a folder. Now, about those donors. Did you know that 40 years ago, this university's physics department was funded almost entirely by women? The Wives and Widows Science Foundation. Society ladies who wanted to support research while their husbands played with stocks. I remember, Catherine said slowly. But that foundation dissolved in the 80s. Officially, yes. Unofficially, Diana smiled wickedly. We just went quiet, invested wisely. Very wisely. She handed Alex the folder. The foundation's current net worth is just over $4 billion. And as the founding chairwoman, I think it's time for us to get loud again. Alex opened the folder and let out a low whistle. These women are all very interested in supporting a major research institution led by a female scientist, Diana finished. Especially one being harassed by the same kind of men who pushed us into the shadows decades ago. Mom, you can't just what? Support my daughter? Stand up to bullies? Protect the future of scientific research. Diana took Catherine's hand. When your father died, you shut yourself away in that lab. When Michael Crawford hurt you, you built those walls higher. Now you've finally found someone who makes you want to tear them down, and you think I'm going to let a bunch of angry old men stop you? Catherine's eyes filled with tears. The media circus alone is nothing compared to what I faced as the first female physics professor here, Diana said firmly. The difference is you're not facing it alone. As if on cue, Emma burst in. We've got trouble. Crawford's out of bankruptcy. Someone bought his debt and restructured the company. Montgomery, Alex guessed.
Worse.
Vanessa Sinclair. Emma held up her tablet. Daddy's little girl used his overseas accounts to buy Crawford Tech. She's calling a press conference in an hour. Let me guess, Catherine sighed. More tears about her broken heart. Actually, Sophie appeared in the doorway. She's announcing her engagement. To Michael Crawford. The room went silent. Alex felt his stomach drop. It's all connected. Crawford, Montgomery, the Sinclairs, they're not just after Pierce Technologies. They want revenge, Catherine realized. On both of us. Michael gets his company back. Vanessa gets her public redemption. And we get destroyed in the press, Emma finished. They'll paint it as a pattern. Crawford will claim Catherine tried the same manipulation with him that they're accusing her of doing with Alex. Vanessa will play the young victim of an older woman's schemes. Montgomery gets the hostile takeover, and the university will weather the storm, Diana said firmly. Like we always have. No, Alex stood suddenly. I won't let them hurt you. Any of you. He pulled out his phone. Sophie, call my lawyer. I'll sign over my shares to Catherine before they can. Alex Pierce, don't you dare play the noble sacrifice, Catherine interrupted. We're in this together, remembers? The press conference is starting, Emma warned. They all turned to the screen, where Vanessa stood beaming beside Michael Crawford. But as she opened her mouth to speak, the feed cut out. Every channel, Every stream replaced by a single image. Catherine's original quantum computing patent application, with Michael Crawford's signature forged at the bottom. "What's happening?" Emma asked. Sophie smiled innocently. "Did I mention I found Crawford's personal email server? The one with decades of correspondence about every patent he ever stole? Such careless cybersecurity for a tech company." "You didn't," Alex breathed. "No, I didn't," Sophie agreed. "But a certain group of very angry graduate students whose research he stole might have. They're releasing everything."
Live. Right now.
Diana laughed delightedly. "I always said the young people would save us." "Mom," Catherine protested, but she was smiling. Speaking of saving, Emma checked her phone. The Wives and Widows Science Foundation just announced their support of the merger. Their spokesperson says, and I quote, "It's time for the old boys club to learn that they're not the only ones who know how to play the game." Alex looked at Catherine, surrounded by the fierce, brilliant women who loved her. "I think I'm starting to understand why you were so hard to impress when we first met." "Oh, darling," Diana patted his cheek. "You haven't seen anything yet." If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way, you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories we have coming up. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more of what you love. Thank you. The fallout from Sophie's cyber revelation was nuclear. Crawford and Vanessa's press conference ended in chaos, with reporters shouting questions about patent theft instead of engagement congratulations. Richard Montgomery disappeared to his private island, unreachable. The Sinclair Group stock plummeted as investors fled the scandal. But victory came with a price. "They're calling for a federal investigation," Marcus reported, pacing Catherine's lab. "Into everything. The patent thefts, the merger, the foundation's finances, even the university's research grants for the past decade. Let them investigate," Diana said calmly, but Catherine saw her mother's hands shake slightly as she arranged her papers. A federal investigation would mean scrutiny of every decision she'd made as dean. "They're trying to bury us in red tape," Alex realized. "Tie everything up in investigations until the merger deadline passes." "That's not all." Emma rushed in, looking pale. "Someone leaked David's research records." Catherine felt the blood drain from her face.
What?
"Your late husband's work," Emma explained to Alex. "The projects he was doing before he died. There are rumors that some of the data was falsified." "That's impossible," Catherine whispered. "David was meticulous. He would never." "Unless he was desperate," Diana said softly. "Those last months, when the cancer treatments weren't working, he was obsessed with finishing his research. With leaving a legacy. Did you know?" Catherine turned to her mother, voice cracking. "I suspected. But he was dying, Catherine. And you were already hurting so much."
"Stop."
Catherine held up a hand. "Just stop." She turned to Alex, who had been unusually quiet. "Did you know about this? Is this why you've been meeting with the university board without me?" "Catherine." "Don't Catherine me. Answer the question." Alex sighed heavily. "Sophie found inconsistencies in David's final papers 2 days ago. I was trying to handle it quietly. Protect your reputation. Like you tried to protect me from Crawford's threats? Or Montgomery's manipulation?" Catherine's voice rose. "When were you going to tell me? Or was this just another thing you decided I was too fragile to handle?" "That's not fair," Alex protested.
"No?"
"Then why did I have to hear about my dead husband's scientific fraud from my sister instead of the man who claims to love me?" The lab fell silent. Even Diana looked uncomfortable. "Maybe," Emma said carefully, "we should give them some privacy." "No need." Catherine grabbed her coat. "I need air. Alone." "Catherine, please," Alex started after her, but Diana caught his arm. "Let her go. She needs time." "Time for what? To decide I'm just like Crawford after all? Making decisions about her life, without consulting her? To decide if she can trust herself," Diana corrected gently. "Catherine's greatest fear isn't being hurt by others, it's being wrong about them. Being blind to their flaws like she was with David." "I was trying to protect her," Alex insisted. "I know," Diana patted his hand. "But she doesn't need protection.
She needs partnership.
There's a difference. Before Alex could respond, Sophie burst in. We have a bigger problem. The SEC is freezing Pierce Technologies' assets. All of them, including the merger funding.
What?
They can't. They can if they have evidence of financial misconduct, Marcus interrupted, which someone just provided them. Lots of evidence. But it's fake, Emma protested. It has to be. Doesn't matter, Alex said grimly. By the time we prove that, the merger deadline will have passed. Montgomery wins. Unless. Sophie hesitated. There might be a way, but you're not going to like it. At this point, I'll take anything. Vanessa reached out. She says she has proof that Montgomery and Crawford orchestrated everything. The patent thefts, the false evidence, all of it. She'll hand it over. What's the catch? Diana asked shrewdly. She wants Alex back.
Publicly.
She'll only release the evidence if he breaks things off with Catherine and announces their reconciliation at tomorrow's shareholder meeting. Alex laughed hollowly. So my choices are, lose my company and watch Catherine's reputation be destroyed, or break her heart to save everything else. There's always another choice, said a quiet voice from the doorway. They turned to find Catherine standing there, eyes red but voice steady. We could trust each other enough to fight this together. How long have you been theirs? Alex asked softly. Long enough to remember why I fell in love with you. She stepped closer. And long enough to be ashamed that I forgot. Even for a moment. Catherine, I'm so sorry about David's research. I know. But right now we have more important things to deal with. She turned to Sophie. Tell Vanessa we accept her offer.
What?
Alex stared at her.
No.
Absolutely not. Yes, Catherine smiled, a fierce light in her eyes. Because unlike them, we know how to use quantum entanglement to our advantage. Emma groaned. Please tell me this isn't going to be another science metaphor. No. Catherine took Alex's hand. This is going to be a lesson in trust, timing, and the fact that when you try to outsmart a quantum physicist, you should really check their math first. Catherine's office became a war room as she laid out her plan. The entire team gathered around her whiteboard, watching her diagram what she called Operation Superposition. In quantum mechanics, she explained, drawing a complex series of intersecting lines, a particle can exist in multiple states simultaneously until it's observed. Right now, they think they're forcing us to choose between two states, Alex's public reconciliation with Vanessa or total destruction. But you have something else in mind, Sophie said, studying the diagram. We're going to exist in both states at once. Catherine's eyes gleamed. Alex will appear to accept Vanessa's deal, while we set up the real trap. You want me to pretend to leave you? Alex looked pained. After everything we've been through, I want you to make them think they've won. Catherine touched his cheek. Trust me? Always? Diana leaned forward, examining the whiteboard.
Ah.
I see what you're planning. Clever girl. Care to share with the rest of us? Emma asked. Catherine nodded to Sophie. Tell Vanessa we agree. Alex will announce their reconciliation at tomorrow's shareholder meeting. But first, the next 12 hours were a whirlwind of secret meetings and carefully orchestrated moves. Marcus coordinated with graduate students worldwide, each ready to release their own evidence of Crawford's patent theft. Emma activated her hospital's board of directors, many of whom were married to the university's biggest donors. Diana rallied her network of society widows, each with decades of dirt on their late husband's business dealings. At midnight, they gathered in Catherine's lab for final preparations. Alex paced nervously while Sophie ran through their timeline once more. The shareholder meeting starts at 9 a.m. Vanessa will arrive with her evidence against Montgomery at 8:30. The SEC investigators are scheduled for 10. And the quantum encryption demonstration? Catherine interrupted. Set for 9:45 right after Alex's announcement. Sophie checked her tablet. Dr. Chen, are you sure about the timing? If we're off by even a minute. In quantum computing, timing is everything, Catherine said firmly. Trust the math. A soft knock interrupted them. Richard Montgomery stood in the doorway, looking oddly deflated. Richard? Alex stepped forward protectively. How did you get in here? Your mother, Richard said quietly. She funded my first company.
Did you know that?
Alex froze.
What?
Margaret Pierce. She was my angel investor, back when no one else would take a chance on me. She made me promise to look out for you if anything happened to her. He laughed bitterly. I doubt this is what she had in mind. Why are you here?
Catherine asked. To warn you.
Crawford's unstable. When Vanessa told him about tomorrow's plan, Richard hesitated. He's not just going to reveal evidence. He's going to destroy everything. The company, the university's reputation, all of it. Why tell us this? Alex demanded. Because Margaret would never forgive me if I let her son lose everything. Richard pulled out a flash drive. This is everything. The real evidence. Crawford's original files, the Sinclair's offshore accounts, my own involvement. Insurance, I called it. Turns out the only person I needed insurance against was myself. Catherine took the drive, studying Richard's face. This changes nothing between us. I know. He turned to Alex. Your mother would be proud of you. Not for building the company, for finding someone who makes you want to be better. He started to leave, then paused. The original bet? I never thought you'd win it. I thought Catherine would see right through you. She did, Alex smiled, taking Catherine's hand. That's why I lost the bet, but won something far more valuable. After Richard left, Emma voiced what they were all thinking. Can we trust him? No, Catherine said simply. But we can use this. Sophie, already analyzing the drive. It's real, and it gives me an idea. Sophie's fingers flew over her keyboard. If we reroute the quantum encryption demonstration through the company's main servers while simultaneously, as the team huddled around Sophie, implementing the new additions to their plan, Diana pulled Catherine aside. You know tomorrow will change everything one way or another. Catherine watched Alex, gesturing animatedly as he and Sophie refined their strategy. It already has. Crawford will come after you personally, Diana warned. He'll try to destroy your reputation, discredit your research. Let him try. Catherine's voice was steel. I spent too many years hiding from scandal, measuring my words, trying to be the perfect academic. I'm done living in superposition, Mom. Tomorrow, we collapse the wave function, and they won't know what hit them. And Alex? Diana glanced at the young billionaire who was now arguing good-naturedly with Emma about quantum probability. Catherine smiled softly. The physics department has a saying, the observer effect states that the mere observation of a phenomenon inevitably changes that phenomenon. By trying to destroy us, they forced us to see each other clearly. Really see each other. And what did you see? That love, like quantum entanglement, doesn't care about conventional boundaries. Age, status, past mistakes. They're all just classical limitations trying to constrain a quantum truth. Diana hugged her daughter tightly. Now that's a physics metaphor even I can appreciate. The Pierce Technologies auditorium hummed with tension as shareholders filed in. Alex stood backstage, adjusting his tie for the 10th time. The morning news was already running stories about his expected reconciliation with Vanessa, complete with old photos of them together at charity galas. Ready? Sophie appeared beside him, tablet in hand. Everything in place. Catherine's quantum encryption demonstration is set up. Emma has the hospital board standing by. Diana's network is ready to move the moment we give the signal. She paused. Are you sure about this? Once we start. We can't stop, Alex finished. I know. He checked his phone, a message from Catherine. Trust the math. The lights dimmed, and Charles Wellington took the stage to thunderous applause. Ladies and gentlemen, shareholders and friends, we're here today to discuss the future of Pierce Technologies. Alex tuned out the platitudes, watching Vanessa slip into a front-row seat, Michael Crawford beside her. They looked triumphant, like cats who'd caught particularly juicy canaries. Richard Montgomery sat 3 rows back, face unreadable. And now, Charles concluded, Alex Pierce has an important announcement. Alex walked onto the stage, the spotlight harsh and hot. He could see Catherine in the back of the auditorium, looking elegant and composed. Their eyes met briefly before he turned to the microphone.
Thank you, Charles.
The past few months have been transformative. He smiled, watching Vanessa preen. I've learned a lot about trust, about value, about what really matters in business and in life. Crawford shifted impatiently. Right on cue, Sophie's voice came through Alex's earpiece. Quantum encryption interface engaging. T-3 minutes. Many of you have expressed concern about my recent decisions. Alex continued. About the company's direction. About my personal life. Another glance at Catherine. You're right. I haven't been myself lately. Vanessa was practically glowing now. Crawford reached for his phone, clearly ready to release their evidence the moment Alex made the announcement. The truth is, Alex paused for effect. I've become someone better. The room went silent. Vanessa's smile froze. 2 minutes, Sophie whispered in his ear. Pierce Technologies was founded on innovation, on pushing boundaries, on questioning conventional wisdom. My mother taught me that. Alex's voice strengthened. But somewhere along the way, we lost that vision. We became about maintaining power instead of advancing knowledge. About appearances instead of substance. Crawford was typing furiously on his phone. Charles Wellington started toward the stage, but security, quietly replaced with Diana's trusted people hours earlier, held him back. So, yes, I have an announcement. Pierce Technologies is proceeding with the university merger, and I am publicly, permanently, choosing love over manipulation, innovation over stagnation, and truth over appearance. You're making a mistake. Vanessa stood, voice shrill. Michael, show them. Having trouble with your phone, Mr. Crawford? Catherine's voice rang out as she walked down the center aisle. Quantum encryption can be so unpredictable. Crawford's face contorted. This is a trick. I have proof. Of what? Catherine reached the stage, taking Alex's hand. Your history of patent theft, the forged documents, the offshore accounts. Check your phones, everyone. It should all be downloading now. Sophie had done her job perfectly. Every shareholder's phone began pinging with notifications. Years of evidence, not just against Crawford and Montgomery, but every board member who had participated in the corruption. You said you'd release the evidence if he chose me, Vanessa sputtered. No, Catherine smiled. We let you think that's what we were planning. In quantum mechanics, we call that a superposition of states.
But now...
She squeezed Alex's hand. The wave function has collapsed. Security, Crawford shouted. Stop them. Oh, I don't think so. Diana Chin stood from her seat. The Wives and Widows Science Foundation now owns 30% of Pierce Technologies shares. And we vote to retain current leadership. That's impossible, Charles protested. The stock was frozen. Only the public shares, Sophie called from the tech booth. The foundation's private purchases went through just fine. Emma burst through the doors. The hospital board's votes are in too. Another 20% for current leadership. Crawford lunged for the stage, but Richard Montgomery caught his arm. It's over, Michael. Margaret Pierce's son turned out to be smarter than all of us. This isn't about being smart, Alex addressed the shocked shareholders. It's about being right, about choosing progress over power, collaboration over control. He turned to Catherine. And love over fear. The room erupted in chaos as reporters rushed in, cameras flashing. But Alex and Catherine barely noticed, lost in their own quantum entanglement. Did you ever doubt the math? She whispered.
Never.
I just doubted whether I deserved you. That's not a variable in this equation, Catherine smiled. Some things transcend calculation. As security led Crawford and his conspirators away, as Sophie coordinated with the SEC investigators now flooding in, as Diana and Emma managed the press, Alex and Catherine shared a kiss that needed no mathematical proof to demonstrate its truth. If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way, you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories we have coming up. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more of what you love. Thank you. The days following the shareholder meeting were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and media frenzy. Alex and Catherine sat together in his office, now their office, watching Crawford and Vanessa's perp walk on the news. The SEC had moved with unprecedented speed, aided by Sophie's meticulous documentation. 12 counts of patent fraud, Emma read from her phone, sprawled on their office couch. Plus securities fraud, conspiracy, and attempted corporate espionage. Crawford's looking at 20 years minimum. The university board just voted, Marcus added, entering with Diana. They're establishing a new oversight committee for research patents. Catherine, they want you to chair it. Catherine looked up from the quantum computing simulation running on her tablet. Only if we can implement the open-source research protocol I proposed. No more patents being hidden away in corporate vaults. Already approved, Diana smiled. Along with full funding for the next decade of quantum research. Speaking of funding, Sophie appeared with a stack of papers. The merger completion documents need your signatures. Both of you. Alex took the papers, but hesitated. Are we sure about the new company name? Piercegen Technologies. Sounds a bit. Perfect, Catherine finished, taking them from him. Unless you're having second thoughts about sharing power? Never. He watched her sign with confident strokes. Though I'm still not sure I understand all the quantum mechanics involved in our encryption system. That's okay, she teased. I'm not sure I understand all of your corporate finance decisions. That's why they call it a partnership. And speaking of partnerships, Emma interrupted, the press is still camped outside wanting statements about your personal relationship. They're calling it the quantum love story now. Let them talk, Alex said, signing the merger documents. We have more important things to focus on, like the fact that Richard Montgomery just arrived for your meeting. Sophie gestured to the waiting area where Richard sat looking uncomfortable. Catherine squeezed Alex's hand. Do you want me to stay? No, I need to do this alone. He kissed her quickly. Besides, don't you have a Nobel Committee interview to prepare for? Don't remind me, she groaned. Mom's more excited about it than I am. As she should be, Diana defended. Though I'm more excited about your other news.
Mom,
Catherine warned, but Alex was already raising an eyebrow. Other news? The quantum computing breakthrough, Catherine said quickly. We'll discuss it later. As everyone filed out, Alex could have sworn he heard Emma whisper something about grandmother that made Diana beam, but Richard's presence demanded his attention. Your mother would be proud, Richard said without preamble. Not just of the company, of the man you've become. Why did you do it? Alex asked. The bet, the manipulation, was it all just business? At first, Richard sighed heavily. Then it became about proving I was still relevant, still in control. I forgot what Margaret taught us both, that true legacy isn't about control at all. It's about impact, Alex finished, remembering his mother's words. Catherine reminds me of her, you know, that same brilliant mind, that refusal to let anyone else define her worth. Richard stood. I'm retiring. For real this time. Montgomery Industries is yours if you want it. We don't, Alex said firmly. But we would like to transform it into a research foundation. Fund the next generation of scientists, especially those who might not otherwise get the chance. Margaret would have loved that. Richard extended his hand. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. Maybe not. Alex shook his hand. But Mom always said grace was about giving people what they need, not what they deserve. After Richard left, Alex found Catherine in her lab, bent over her quantum processor with that familiar look of concentration he'd grown to love. Everything okay? She asked without looking up. Better than okay. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. Now, what's this other news my future mother-in-law is so excited about? Catherine stiffened. We haven't even discussed marriage, haven't we? Alex turned her to face him. I think we've been discussing it since that first lecture. We just took a quantum approach, existing in multiple states until the right moment of observation. Very smooth, she laughed. Been practicing that one? Maybe a little. He dropped to one knee, pulling out a ring. But this part one want to get exactly right. Alex. Catherine Chun, you didn't just make me a better man. You showed me that love, like quantum entanglement, transcends all conventional limitations. Will you? Yes, she interrupted, pulling him up into a kiss. The answer was always going to be yes. You didn't let me finish, he protested. I'm a quantum physicist, darling. I believe in taking the shortest path between 2 points. She slipped on the ring. Now, about that other news. The university's quantum research lab had been transformed. Equations still covered the white boards, but they now competed with wedding plans and ultrasound photos. Catherine sat at her desk, one hand absently resting on her small baby bump while she reviewed seating arrangements with Emma and Sophie. You realize most people don't plan their weddings using quantum probability algorithms, Emma teased, watching Sophie input data into a specialized program. Most people don't have to seat 3 Nobel laureates, 4 tech billionaires, and a dozen society widows without causing an international incident, Catherine replied. Besides, the algorithm was Alex's idea. Speaking of your genius fiancé, Sophie checked her tablet. He's on his way up with the latest merger results. The Pearson Foundation has already funded 50 new research grants. And the Michelle Crawford Women in Science program? Catherine asked, referring to the initiative named after Michael Crawford's mother, another brilliant scientist whose work had been stolen and credited to her husband decades ago. Full enrollment for the fall semester, Emma confirmed, though Diana's still arguing with the board about expanding the age requirements. She's convinced 70 isn't too old to start a PhD. Mom's not wrong, Catherine smiled, though I think she's just excited about having both a grandchild and a doctorate to spoil next year. The door burst open as Alex rushed in, his usual polished appearance slightly rumpled. Sorry I'm late. The quantum encryption team had a breakthrough, and then Richard called about the Foundation's new AI ethics guidelines, and he stopped, staring at Catherine. You're wearing my jacket? She snuggled deeper into his oversized suit jacket. The baby likes it. Something about your scent being calming. Our daughter has good taste. Alex dropped a kiss on her head. Still convinced it's a girl? Just following the probability wave function, he grinned. Speaking of which, he pulled out a small box. Mom's quantum necklace. The university engineers helped me restore it. I thought for the weddings. Catherine opened the box with trembling fingers. The delicate chain held a pendant containing some of the first quantum that's ever synthesized. Margaret Pierce's groundbreaking work that had helped launch the quantum computing revolution. Alex, this is, are you sure? She would have wanted you to have it. You're finishing the work she started, both scientifically and... He touched her bump gently. In other ways, Emma pretended to gag. You two are sickeningly sweet. Though I guess the quantum mechanics pickup lines worked better than have you met my offshore accounts? Actually, Sophie interjected, the final numbers came in from the SEC. Crawford's offshore accounts are being liquidated to create a victim restitution fund. Over 300 scientists will get compensation for their stolen patents, including David's estate, Catherine said quietly. I'm donating his portion to a cancer research fellowship in his name. It feels right, somehow. Alex squeezed her shoulder, understanding the complex emotions. He'd be proud of how you've turned pain into progress. Speaking of progress, Emma checked her phone. The caterers need a final head count. Assuming the quantum seating algorithm works. It'll work, Alex and Catherine said simultaneously, then laughed. The real question, Sophie added, is whether you're really going to let Diana officiate the ceremony. Mom's been a quantum mechanics professor for 40 years, Catherine pointed out. If anyone can explain how 2 particles with seemingly incompatible properties can form a perfect bond. Plus, Alex added, she promised to keep the physics metaphors to a minimum. Though I'm pretty sure she's lying about that. At least Vanessa can't crash the wedding from prison, Emma mused. Though her last statement to the press was interesting, Catherine raised an eyebrow. Oh. She said she finally understood what real love looks like. That watching you two fight for each other, support each other, be willing to risk everything, it made her realize what she'd been missing. People can surprise you, Alex said softly. Sometimes it just takes the right catalyst to trigger a transformation. Now, who's using science metaphors? Catherine teased. I learned from the best. He helped her up, one hand protectively around her waist. Ready to go shock the wedding planner with our quantum-optimized seating chart. Please, Emma snorted. After everything we've been through, a little wedding drama is practically classical physics. As they gathered their things, Catherine paused to look around her lab. The equations, the wedding plans, the ultrasound photos, different phases of her life coming together in perfect quantum harmony. She touched Margaret's necklace, feeling its historic significance, its promise of future discoveries. Having second thoughts? Alex asked softly.
No, she smiled.
Just appreciating all the variables that had to align to bring us here. The daughter of a physics professor and the son of a quantum pioneer, finding each other at exactly the right moment, he finished. Though I'm still sorry about the bet that started it all. Don't be. She kissed him softly. Sometimes the wrong beginning leads to exactly the right end result. Any quantum physicist can tell you that. The university gardens bloomed with possibility on the wedding day. Quantum equations written in lights twinkled among the flowers. Diana's touch, of course. The gathered crowd represented a unique convergence. Scientists and executives, students and society widows, all united by the improbable love story they'd witnessed. Diana stood at the altar, resplendent in her academic robes, because some occasions require gravitas, dear. Alex waited nervously, Sophie and Emma giving him encouraging thumbs up from the front row. When Catherine appeared, escorted by Marcus, the collective intake of breath was audible. She wore an elegant gown that embraced her pregnancy rather than hiding it, Margaret's quantum necklace gleaming at her throat. But it was her smile, radiant, unguarded, fully present, that transformed her. Gone was the woman who'd built walls around her heart. In her place stood someone who had learned that true strength comes not from protection, but from connection. Distinguished colleagues, beloved friends, curious observers, Diana began, earning knowing chuckles. We gather today to witness what physics would call an unlikely event. Two particles from different worlds, moving at different velocities, somehow finding their perfect resonance. Alex and Catherine exchanged amused glances. So much for keeping the physics metaphors minimal. But unlike particles, Diana continued, humans have the remarkable ability to choose their path, to overcome initial conditions, to transform through observation and interaction. She smiled at the couple. These two people chose to see beyond surface differences, beyond societal expectations, beyond their own prejudices. They chose to be changed by love. Catherine squeezed Alex's hand as Diana gestured to the gathered crowd. Look around. Corporate leaders funding scientific research. Society matrons championing women in STEM. Young students seeing that love knows no boundaries. Former rivals becoming allies. All because two people dared to question their assumptions about who they could love. The mathematical probability of their initial meeting was high. Diana's eyes twinkled, given a certain ill-advised bet. But the probability of their love succeeding? That required something beyond calculation. It required courage. The courage to be wrong. The courage to change. The courage to trust. As they exchanged their vows, the setting sun caught Margaret's necklace, sending quantum-engineered light dancing across their faces. With this ring, Alex's voice was thick with emotion. I promise to always calculate our love beyond conventional parameters. With this ring, Catherine replied, tears sparkling, I promise to trust in possibilities over limitations. Later, at the reception, Sophie clinked her glass for attention. The news she'd been sitting on could finally be shared. The Nobel Committee has just announced. She paused for dramatic effect that Catherine Chin-Pierce's quantum encryption breakthrough will be awarded this year's prize in physics. The crowd erupted in cheers. Alex kissed his wife proudly. Dr. Nobel laureate Chin-Pierce. That has a nice ring to it. Almost as nice as Dad, she whispered in his ear, making him freeze. Wait, twins? The probability calculation said. Sometimes, she laughed, love multiplies beyond our calculations. As they danced under the quantum lights, their unlikely extended family celebrating around them, the moral of their story became clear. True love, like the quantum realm, doesn't follow classical rules. It exists in possibilities rather than limitations. It transforms through observation. It connects across any distance. And most importantly, it proves that the human heart, like quantum particles, cannot be confined by society's boundaries. The bet that began their story was based on prejudice, but their love proved that the greatest experiments often yield unexpected results. In questioning his assumptions about age and worth, Alex found not just love, but a better version of himself. In opening her heart to unlikely possibilities, Catherine discovered that protecting yourself from pain means missing life's most profound connections. Together, they proved that love, science, and human connection all share one fundamental truth. The moment you think you know all the answers is the moment you stop growing. Real transformation, whether in particles or people, requires the courage to exist in uncertainty, to challenge assumptions, and to believe that the most powerful force in any universe is two hearts beating in quantum entanglement. As the evening wound down, Diana found them sharing a quiet moment in Catherine's lab, surrounded by equations and endless possibility. You know, she said wisely, the most beautiful thing about quantum mechanics is that it proves everything in the universe is connected. Every particle, every person, every possibility. Mom, Catherine warned, you promised to ease up on the physics metaphors. Fine, Diana conceded. But remember this, love, like science, is about discovery. You too discovered that the boundaries we place on love, age, status, background, are as artificial as the boundaries we once placed on particles. The only real limit is our courage to see beyond them. Alex and Catherine looked at each other, their love reflecting in the soft glow of quantum equations. In the end, their story wasn't about age or prejudice or even science. It was about the courage to question our assumptions, the wisdom to learn from our mistakes, and the faith to believe that love, in all its improbable configurations, is the most powerful force for transformation we possess.